There are quite a lot of references to Gen 5 in Pokémon Scarlet and Violet's Indigo Disc DLC. I mean, the Blueberry Academy is located in the Unova region after all, so it was pretty obvious there would be some callbacks to Pokémon Black and White, but I don't think any of us expected just how many Unova references there would be littered throughout this DLC. So let's go through all the ones I noticed. Immediately upon arriving at Blueberry Academy, we meet Lacey, one of the school's Elite Four and apparently the daughter of a Unovan gym leader. Since before the DLC even came out, many fans picked up on the peculiar appearance of her little hair clips, resembling the big jewel on the hat of a certain ground-loving cowboy from Driftvale City. So it seems Lacey's most likely the daughter of Clay, which would definitely explain why her ace Pokemon is Excadrill, despite her mainly training fairy types. But Lacey's not the only Nepo baby in the Blueberry Elite Four, as the Dragon Specialist Drayton almost has the same name as his grandfather Drayden, the gym leader of Opalucid City. When first challenging the BB League, you can read about each member and see that Drayden actually comes from Opalucid City, but in case you somehow still aren't convinced, their relationship is officially confirmed if you invite Paldean Elite Four member / art teacher Hassel to come visit the club room, where he directly calls out Drayton for not living up to his grandfather. The final two Elite Four members might also have special ancestors, however there's no confirmation as clear as with Lacey or Drayton. But just in case you were curious, Amaris hails from the big city of Castilia, while Crispin was cooked in Burbank, which was an exclusive to Pokemon Black and White 2. Moving on from the characters though, let's talk about some of the familiar locations we can spot throughout Blueberry Academy. The most obvious of course being the Chargestone Cavern, which is basically a remastered version of the Chargestone Cave. The electrified Galvantula cobwebs and big blue crystals surging with every step you take have been almost perfectly recreated, and I really hope if they decide to do Black and White remakes that they'll look something like this and not faithful. If you've played Black and White, you should have easily recognized this cave, but I'll bet you didn't notice they also brought back the Nature Preserve from Pokemon Black and White 2. In case you don't remember this area, it could only be accessed in the postgame by taking a plane from Mistralton City, and in it you could find some of the highest leveled wild Pokemon ever, but it was most famous for featuring a special encounter with a shiny Haxorus as your reward for making it this far. Which is why you can find a special Stellar-type Terra Haxorus in the area that matches after you've completed the DLC story. It's interesting just how similar the maps for these two locations look, like it's pretty much an exact one-to-one replica, which makes me wonder if maybe we actually flew to the terrarium all those years ago. And while we're on the topic of the location of this academy, it's worth noting that some of the students near the school's entrance mention that we arrive here via an underwater subway tunnel, which definitely reminds me of the marine tube from Pokemon Black and White 2. This spectacular looking walk-through aquarium connected Undella Town and Humilau City, which are both in the east of Unova, so it's possible that Blueberry Academy could be located nearby, meaning somewhere in the ocean to the east of Unova. From the entrance, we can access the League Club Room, which you should probably be familiar with at this point, but in case you didn't know, you can use the computer here to unlock various features with BP, one of these being the ability to change the appearance of the Club Room. And there's a couple of them that pay tribute to Gen 5. The Monochrome Room in particular is pretty much a love letter to Black and White, from the color scheme to the many art pieces you can find hanging on the walls depicting the famous Sky Arrow Bridge complete with Golurk in flight mode, the cool but sometimes confusing version exclusives Black City and White Forest, and portraits of the Unovan starter Pokemon Excadrill and a few others. There's even more Unovan Pokemon doodled on this whiteboard, and a little model of Nimbasa City's Ferris wheel where we went on a date with N that you can even press the A button to make spin, which is pretty cute. These hexagons on the wall could be a reference to the Sea Gear feature, which was the bottom screen for these TS games. Finally, we have another set of hexagons, but these are most definitely a reference to the Gen 5 Pokemon Cryogonal. There's also the Futuristic Room, which calls back to a not so well-known feature of Unova, Pokestar Studios. In this Hollywood-inspired side activity, you could become an actor and take part in Pokemon movies, each with a different theme like superheroes or sci-fi. And it's the latter one that's referenced in this club room, where we can spot the giant Mecha Tyranitar from the Big Monster movie and the blimp-looking UFO from the Invader series. I also spotted this giant golden plate that looks really familiar, but I can't quite remember what it's from. So if any of you know, drop it in the comments, cause I'm really curious about this thing. But finally, we can spot some props of the helmet your character wears during the sci-fi themed movies I mentioned earlier. In the League Club room, you can also unlock a speaker that lets you play different tunes from the Pokemon world. Most of them are from Scarlet and Violet, but if you spend enough BP unlocking every other track, you'll eventually unlock the Special Songs collection, which includes some more obscure songs like the Paldea League Interview, Jubilife Village from Pokemon Legends, but most importantly, the theme from Castelia City. Not even a remix, just straight up good old black and white. But of course, this is far from the only piece of Unova's music that made it into this DLC. While exploring the terrarium, you probably noticed a few of the biome songs also sample parts of classic Unovan themes, but the one I'm sure everyone recognized was Driftvale City being part of the coastal biome theme. If you pay close enough attention, there are a lot of little bits of Unova's music sprinkled into each of the biome themes, so let me know which ones you've noticed. It's really cool hearing these little references while running around in the wild, but once you get into a battle, oh man, I was not expecting a full-blown remix of the actual wild Pokemon theme from Gen 5. It gets even crazier when you realize the Terra Pokemon actually use a remix of the rare Pokemon encounter theme. And of course, trainers have a remix of the Unova trainer battle theme. Interestingly though, the BB League's Elite Four doesn't seem to reference Black and White's Elite Four music, but instead the legendary Pokemon battle music. Speaking of legendaries, we can of course catch Reshiram, Zekrom, Kyurem, Terrakion, Virizion, and Cobalion in this DLC, but I wouldn't really call them Unova references exactly since a ton of other legendaries can also be caught. It is kinda interesting though that in the trailer the main Black and White trio seemed to get a spotlight on their own, while most of the other legendaries were part of a collage. But the absolute craziest Unova reference in this whole video has to be the fact that we can find the mythical Pokemon Meloetta hidden in the terrarium. Back in Black and White, you could visit a cafe found in the alleys of Castelia City. Inside, you'll meet this musician that gets reminded of his sepia-toned memories. Now, over 12 years later, we finally understand what he meant by sepia-toned memories, as we actually have to use the sepia tone in our camera to summon Meloetta. And that's every Pokemon Black and White / Unova reference found in the Indigo disc. Let me know if there are any others you spotted while playing, and don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.